Tonight was silent. Only the sound of shovels breaking the hard ground echoed across the barren desert. The moonlight fell cold on the faces of the gathered villagers, their eyes hard, their voices cruel. In the center of the circle stood a girl, small, fragile, her wrists tied with rough rope. Her people had judged her unworthy of life, for she was sterile, unable to give children to her kind, and to them, that was the greatest shame. She begged, her voice trembling. Please, I can serve, I can work, I can still be useful. But no one listened. The elders raised their hands, declaring the sentence, "She is cursed. Let her blood return to the ground. Let the beasts take her." The crowd murmured in agreement, their faces cold, no pity in their eyes. For them, it was law, old and unbroken, a law sharper than any blade. The girl struggled as they dragged her to the pit, her bare feet scraping against the stones. She cried out for her mother, her father, for anyone to save her. But her family stood silent, heads bowed in shame. To them, she was no longer kin, no longer daughter, only a burden. The guards forced her into the hole and began to shovel dirt, packing it tight around her legs, her waist, her chest. She gasped as the weight pressed down, cold soil biting into her skin, until only her head was above the ground. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her dark eyes wide with terror, the night air chilling her damp face. The elders stepped back, their work done, and the people left, leaving her for the desert's cruel justice. Above her, the stars burned bright, far and distant, as if mocking her small life. Every breath became harder as fear wrapped around her throat. She thought of the years she had lived, short and bitter, and she whispered to herself, "Is this truly how I end?" Hours passed. The desert wind grew colder. Shadows stretched long across the sand. Her body ached. Her heart throbbed with panic, and she began to slip into despair. The silence was broken only by the howl of a beast somewhere in the distance, and her breath caught in terror. Her people had not lied. Soon the creatures would come, and she would be nothing but bones left under the stars. Then, footsteps, slow and heavy, not the light tread of her kin, not the padded steps of beasts, but something different. Her weak eyes lifted, and in the distance she saw a figure moving through the dark, tall, broad, carrying something slung over one shoulder. A human, one of the settlers who lived at the edge of the colony, a man with graying hair and tired eyes. He was alone, his steps steady but heavy with the weight of many years and many losses. The girl tried to call out, her throat dry, her voice breaking. At first he did not hear, but as he drew closer he paused, his ears catching the faint, desperate cry. His gaze turned, and when he saw her buried in the ground, his eyes widened, with shock and fury. "What madness is this?" he whispered to himself, anger burning in his chest. Without hesitation, he dropped his pack and rushed forward, falling to his knees beside her. His hands dug into the dirt, pulling away the packed soil with a desperate strength. The girl blinked, hardly believing. Why are you helping me?" she whispered, her voice raw. The man did not answer at first, his jaw set tight, his fingers bleeding as he tore at the earth. Finally, his deep voice rumbled, "Because no one deserves to die like this." The dirt gave way and he pulled her free, lifting her small, trembling body into his arms. She was light, far too light, her skin pale, her lips blue, and he felt her shiver against his chest. He glanced into the dark horizon, knowing the villagers would not forgive what he had done, but he also knew he could not leave her here, not to the wolves, not to the cold, not to the grave dug by her own people. He rose, his breath heavy, his arms strong around her, and whispered, "You're safe now, little one. I will not let them take you again." Behind them, the night remained silent, but the weight of what he had done was heavy. The girl closed her eyes, her tears hot against his shirt, and in that moment, for the first time, she felt a spark of hope. But deep in her heart, a question lingered like a shadow. Had he saved her life? Or had he only invited a greater danger upon them both? The desert night was long, and the human father carried the girl across the sand with heavy steps. His arms ached. His breath came hard, but he did not stop. The girl, weak and shivering, rested her head against his chest, too drained even to ask where he was taking her. The stars above were silent witnesses, shining coldly as if watching a crime. For in the eyes of her people, that was what this man had done. He had stolen one condemned and broken their law. At last, faint lights appeared ahead, small lanterns hanging from the roof of a lonely wooden house. It stood near the edge of the human settlement, far from the alien village where whispers carried slower. He pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, the air warmer, the smell of smoke from a dying fire filling the small room. A boy sat at the table, no more than 10 years old, his dark eyes wide as he saw his father bring in the frail alien girl. "Father, who is she?" the boy asked, his voice quiet but curious. The man lowered her gently onto a small cot, covering her with a worn blanket. "She is someone who needed saving," he answered firmly, though his tone was tired. The boy frowned, glancing from the girl to his father. "But they will be angry, the villagers, they will come." The man looked into his son's eyes, his own gaze steady. "Let them come. I will not hand her back to die." The girl stirred, her eyes opening slowly, her throat raw from thirst. Why would you do this?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. Her kind had called her worthless, cursed, fit only for the grave, but this man, this human, had risked himself for her, and she could not understand why. The father looked at her, his face worn with lines of grief and years of hardship. "Because I once watched someone I loved die and I could not stop it, I will not watch again, not when I can fight." He poured water into a cup and helped her drink, his hands rough but gentle. The liquid slid down her throat, easing the burning pain, and she closed her eyes in relief. The boy crept closer, peering at her small form, his head tilted with curiosity. "She looks like a ghost," he said softly, "but her eyes are alive." The girl flinched at his words, but the father placed a hand on his son's shoulder, shaking his head. "She is no ghost. She is flesh and blood, like us." Remember that outside the wind howled against the wooden walls, and the girl shivered under the blanket. Fear gnawed at her heart, for she knew her people would not forgive this. They would come for her. They would come for the man who saved her, and for his child too. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "You should let me go. If they find me here, they will hurt you." But the father straightened, his jaw set, his voice deep and unyielding. "I have already made my choice. If they want you, they will have to face me first." The boy looked at his father with wide eyes, a spark of pride shining there. He had seen his father broken before, mourning the loss of his wife, heavy with loneliness. But now, for the first time in months, maybe years, his father stood tall, defiant, unshaken. The girl stared at him, confusion and awe battling in her chest. Why would a human, a stranger, fight so fiercely for her life, when her own kin had buried her alive? Hours passed, the girl's body weak but her spirit restless. She lay awake, hearing the crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of the boy, the quiet steps of the father as he kept watch. Every sound outside made her tense. Every gust of wind made her fear it was the elders coming for her. But through it all, the man's presence was steady, his shadow always near, his figure like a wall between her and the night. For the first time, she felt something strange, something alien to her heart, safety. As dawn broke, golden light spilled across the room. The father opened the door and looked at the rising sun, his eyes tired but resolute. Behind him, the girl tried to sit up, her strength slowly returning, though her hands still shook. She whispered softly, almost to herself, Maybe I was not meant to die." The man turned to her, his voice firm but gentle. "No one is meant to die like that, and as long as I breathe, you will live." But in the distance, faint horns echoed from the alien village, sharp and haunting. The father's face hardened, his hand gripping the doorframe. The boy ran to the window, his eyes wide with fear. "They are coming, father," he said, his voice trembling. The girl's heart sank, her brief hope fading into dread once more, for the sentence of death had not ended with the desert. It was following her here, to this house, to this family. And the question burned in her mind. How long could a human defy a whole people? The sun rose over the desert, painting the sky with red and gold. But the peace of morning did not reach the village. Instead, whispers moved like shadows between houses. "They say the human took her," one woman muttered, her eyes darting. "He carried the sterile one from the grave, defied the elders," another added, her voice trembling with both fear and anger. Children repeated the tale in hushed tones, their eyes wide as if speaking of a ghost. By midday, the story had spread across the colony, carried on lips like wildfire. Some spat in disgust, calling the human cursed. Others shivered in unease, wondering if his defiance would bring ruin upon them all. The elders gathered in a dark chamber, their faces set in grim lines. "He dares to break our law," one growled, slamming his hand upon the table. "If he is not punished, others will question us. Our rule will weaken." Another hissed, her eyes sharp as knives. The leader of the council, his voice old and dry like sand, spoke slowly. "The girl was marked by the gods as barren. She was meant to die. Now this human has stolen her fate." Meanwhile, in the human's small house, at the edge of the settlement, the girl sat by the fire, her body still weak, her heart restless. She could hear the whispers outside, faint but sharp, like stones thrown at windows. "They will come for me," she murmured, her hands clutching the blanket tighter. The boy sat across from her, his young eyes full of questions. "Why do they hate you so much? You are just you." Her lips trembled, shame heavy on her shoulders. "Because I cannot give life, and to them that means I am nothing." The father, standing by the door with his arms crossed, spoke firmly. "You are not nothing, not to me, not to my son." The girl's chest ached at his words, warmth pushing against the cold wall of her despair, but she shook her head, fear overwhelming her. "They will punish you. They will exile you, maybe even kill you." His gaze did not waver, his voice deep and unyielding. "Let them try. I buried my wife myself. I will not bury another innocent while I live." That night, the village tavern filled with voices rough and angry. Men slammed their cups, women whispered, all of them waiting for someone else to take the first step. One man spat on the floor. "The human thinks himself above our law. We should drag him into the square and bury him beside her." But another, younger one, shook his head. "He is not weak. You have seen him fight before. He has strength and worse. He has nothing left to lose." Their voices clashed, fear battling with anger until the room was thick with tension. Back at the house, the girl could not sleep. Every creak of the wood made her flinch. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps outside. The boy, lying on his cot, whispered into the dark, "Do you think they will really come?" The girl did not answer, for she feared her truth would crush his small heart. The father sat awake by the window, staring into the night, his hand resting near the rifle leaning against the wall. His thoughts burned. He knew the village would not remain silent. He knew their whispers would soon turn to shouts, but still he sat, a wall of flesh and bone, guarding those inside from the world outside. Morning came again, and with it the first knock on the door. It was not gentle but sharp, angry like fists demanding entry. The girl froze, her body stiff with terror, but the father rose calmly, opening the door just enough to see. 3 men stood there, their faces cold, their words sharper than steel. "You have taken what was condemned," one said, his voice heavy with authority. "Return her, or suffer as she was meant to." The father's eyes narrowed, his voice low but firm. "She is under my roof now. She is mine to protect. You will not take her." The men glared, their fists clenched, but they did not step forward. Not yet. They muttered threats and promises of the council's wrath before turning back toward the village. The boy closed the door quickly, his heart pounding. "Father, what will we do?" The man stood still, his shadow long in the morning light. "We will stand," he said, his tone heavy with iron. Inside, the girl's heart beat wildly, torn between gratitude and guilt. She wanted to thank him, but also to beg him to let her go, to save himself and his son. But his eyes, steady and unflinching, told her the truth. He had already chosen. There was no turning back. Outside, the whispers grew louder, gathering strength. The village was no longer content with murmurs and shadows. Soon the storm would break upon their small house, and the girl wondered, trembling in the firelight, if she was worth the price that was about to be paid. The night was quiet inside the wooden house, but the silence was heavy. Like a storm waiting to break, the girl sat near the fire, her knees pulled to her chest, staring into the flames, her thoughts dark and tangled. The boy slept peacefully, his small body curled under a blanket, his breath slow and soft, but the father did not sleep. He sat by the window, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the village lights flickered faintly. He had lived many years in this land, yet tonight felt different, heavier, more dangerous. The girl finally spoke, her voice soft. "Why are you doing this for me? You know they will come. They will not forgive you." The man turned his head slowly. His face caught in the glow of the fire, lines of grief carved deep into his skin. "Because I know what it means to lose someone you love," he said quietly, his voice rough. Her eyes widened, the words sinking into her heart. She wanted to ask, but fear held her tongue. He sighed, his shoulders heavy, his gaze far away as if he was seeing another time, another place. "I had a wife once," he began, his voice steady but filled with sorrow. She was gentle, kind. Her laughter could fill this house with warmth. The girl listened, silent, sensing this was not an easy story. She grew sick. No doctor, no medicine, no prayers could help her. I held her hand as she slipped away, and I buried her under the lone tree behind this house. His voice cracked, just slightly, but he pushed on. My son was small then, too small to understand why his mother was gone. He cried for her every night, and I had no words to give him, only silence. The girl's heart ached. She lowered her eyes, ashamed of her own despair when his pain was carved so deep. He looked at her again, his eyes sharp but kind. "So when I saw you in that grave, I saw her. I saw the same helplessness, the same cruelty of fate, and I swore I would not let it happen again." Tears stung her eyes, her throat tightened. "But I am not her," she whispered. "I am nothing. I cannot give children. I am only a curse to my people." His voice grew fierce. "You are not nothing. Do not ever believe that. Life is more than what they tell you it is, more than their laws, more than their cruel judgment." He stood, walking to the corner of the room where a simple box rested. He opened it slowly, pulling out a small necklace, silver and worn, its chain delicate. "This belonged to her," he said, his thumb brushing over it gently. "I keep it to remember that love is not measured by what someone can give, but by what they are." He held it out to the girl, who shook her head in shock. "No, I cannot. It is too precious." But he placed it in her trembling hands, his voice steady. "Then you will keep it, not as a replacement, but as a reminder that your life has value, no matter what they say." Her fingers closed around the necklace, her chest heavy with emotion, tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time, someone had given her something not out of pity, but out of belief that she deserved to exist. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Thank you." The words small but filled with meaning. The man nodded, his face calm, though his eyes glistened in the firelight. In that moment, the girl saw the truth. He was not just a savior, not just a human. He was a man scarred by loss, yet strong enough to stand against the world for a stranger. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence with warmth, but outside the night was alive with movement. In the distance, torches flickered, shadows moved across the sand. The whispers of the village had grown into something larger, something dangerous. The boy stirred in his sleep, sensing the unrest in the air, and the girl's body tensed. Fear, returning like a knife to her chest. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice shaking. The father closed the box and stood tall, his shadow stretching across the room. "Let them come. I will not give you up." The girl wanted to protest, wanted to beg him not to risk his life for her, but the words died in her throat, for she knew he would not listen. His choice was already made, carved in his soul like stone, and deep within her, beneath the fear and doubt, a strange feeling stirred. It was not just gratitude, but something stronger, something she had never known. Belonging. She was not his blood, not his kin, yet he looked at her as if she was family, as if she was worth fighting for. The night grew darker, the torches drawing nearer, the sound of distant drums echoing across the desert. The father placed his hand on the rifle, leaning by the window, his jaw tight, his voice calm but fierce. Tonight they will see what it means when a man defies them. Tonight they will know I will not bend. The girl clutched the necklace to her chest, her heart racing, torn between hope and dread. For the lonely father had revealed his pain, but also his unbreakable will. And she knew the storm was about to crash upon them all. The morning sun rose red over the desert, but the warmth it brought did not reach the human's home. The girl sat near the window, her hands clutching the silver necklace he had given her, her heart pounding with dread. The boy ate quietly, his eyes glancing again and again at his father, who stood tall by the door, his rifle leaning against the wall. There was no peace inside the house, only waiting, heavy and sharp. And then the sound came, the steady beat of drums rolling across the sand. The girl's blood ran cold. She knew that rhythm. It was the march of the elders' guards. She rushed to the window, her breath catching in her throat. Across the dunes, shapes appeared, tall, figures carrying spears, torches, and banners marked with the sign of judgment. At their head walked the elders, wrapped in heavy cloaks, their faces stern and pitiless. The boy gasped, "They're here, Father," his voice trembling with both fear and awe. The father stepped forward, calm and steady, though inside his chest his heart thudded like a war drum. "Stay back," he ordered gently, placing himself between the door and his children, his son by blood and the girl by choice. Outside, the guards stopped in a wide circle around the house, their eyes hard, their weapons glinting under the sun. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice carrying across the sand, sharp as a blade. "You have broken our law, human. You have stolen the condemned from her grave. You shame us before the gods." The father opened the door and stepped outside, his broad shoulders framed by the light behind him. His face was carved in iron, his voice low but strong. "I saved a child. I broke no law worth keeping, and I will not give her back." The Biu crowd hissed, their voices rising in anger. Some shouted for his blood, others demanded the girl be dragged out and buried again. The elder raised a hand and the noise fell. "Do you think yourself above us? Do you think your human mercy outweighs our tradition?" The man did not flinch. "I think mercy is stronger than cruelty, and I will stand by that even if the whole desert rises against me." Inside, the girl trembled, her eyes wet with tears, guilt stabbing her heart. She wanted to run out, to beg them to spare him, to give herself back to the grave, but her body refused to move. The boy grabbed her hand tightly, whispering, "Don't go. Father won't let them take you." His small voice, so certain, so brave, cut into her chest, making her tears fall faster. Why did this family believe in her when her own people had abandoned her? The guards moved forward, their spears raised, the drums beating louder. But the father lifted his rifle and cocked it, the sound sharp and echoing. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with tension, every breath heavy as stone. "I do not want blood," the man said, his voice deep and steady. "But if you force me, I will defend my home, my son, and the girl you left to die." The elder narrowed his eyes, his cloak flapping in the desert wind. "You are only one man," he sneered. "We are many." The father's gaze burned like fire. "Then know this. One man who has nothing left to lose can be more dangerous than an army." The words struck the crowd, and for a moment doubt flickered in their eyes. The girl pressed her hand to her mouth, her heart racing, every word he spoke searing into her soul. He was not only fighting for her, he was fighting for what was right, standing against a law older than any memory. And in that moment, she no longer saw him only as a savior, but as something far greater, a warrior of the heart. The elder snarled, raising his hand again. "If you resist, your house will burn, your son will be cast out, and she will die slowly." The man tightened his grip on his rifle, his eyes unblinking, his jaw locked like stone, but before he could answer, the girl stumbled forward, her voice breaking. "Stop. Please don't hurt them. Take me if you must. The boy cried out, grabbing her arm. No! His voice sharp with desperation. The father's chest ached at her words. But his voice thundered. No! You will not give yourself to their cruelty, not while I stand. The guards shifted, their spears gleaming, their bodies tense. The torches crackled, sparks dancing into the air as the drums beat faster, faster. It felt like the moment before a storm, the breath before lightning strikes, the silence before war. The girl's heart hammered in her chest. The boy clung to her, and the father stood tall, unshaken, a wall of iron before them. And though the elders stood with their guards, though, the desert seemed to bow to their power. One truth cut through the air like a blade. This was not only about law anymore, it was about defiance, about one human daring to challenge the chains of an entire people. And the question that hung heavy in every breath was this: would he survive the fire that was about to fall, or would his courage be the spark that changed everything? The sun dipped low and the desert turned red as if painted with blood. The guards had not attacked yet, but they had not left either. Their torches burned outside the human's house, their drums beating slowly, like a heart waiting to stop. Inside, the girl sat trembling, her hands clutching the necklace tight against her chest. The boy held her arm, his small fingers firm, his eyes wide with fear yet filled with stubborn courage. The father stood at the door, his rifle ready, his shadow stretching long in the firelight. The villagers gathered more and more, their voices rising, some shouting for justice, others for blood. The elders stood at the front, their faces carved with stone, watching the house as if it was already a grave. The air grew heavy, thick with anger and fear. The girl felt her chest tighten, her breath shallow. The thought burned in her mind, they will not stop, not until I am gone. Her tears slid down, and she whispered to herself, I cannot let them suffer for me. Quietly, she stood, her legs weak but her resolve burning. The boy tried to hold her back. Don't go, they'll kill you, he cried. But she shook her head. Her voice trembled but steady. If I stay, they will burn your house. They will hurt your father. They will hurt you. I can't let that happen. She stepped toward the door, her bare feet light on the wooden floor, but the father turned suddenly, blocking her path. His voice thundered, No, you will not give yourself to them. Her eyes widened, tears falling harder. But they will destroy everything you have, everything you love. The man's face was dark with fire, his voice like a storm. Listen to me. Your life is not theirs to take. You are under my roof, and that means your life is mine to protect. The girl shook her head, sobbing. Why? Why risk everything? I am not worth it. His hand gripped her shoulders firmly, his gaze burning into hers. Because I lost my wife once. I will not lose you too. Because my son needs to learn that a life, any life, is worth more than fear. And because you are not nothing, you are someone. The boy stood beside them, his small chest rising fast, his voice fierce. She's my sister now, and they can't take her. The words hit her heart like lightning. Her breath caught, her body shook. She had never been called that before, never been wanted. She cried harder, burying her face in her hands, the necklace pressing into her skin. The father pulled her gently to his side, shielding her from the door. They will not have you, not tonight. Outside, the drums quickened, torches waved in the air. The mob roared louder. Burn the house, someone shouted. Drag the cursed one out, others cried. The father's hand tightened on his rifle, his eyes steady, his body calm, though the storm outside raged. He opened the door just enough to step out, his figure framed by the firelight behind him. The crowd fell silent for a moment, staring at the lone man standing against them all. His voice rolled across the desert, strong and deep. You call this justice, to bury a child alive, to burn a house because of kindness. You call this law, but I call it madness. The elder raised his staff, his face twisted with rage. You will die for this insult, human. The guards moved forward, their spears glinting, but before they could strike, a small voice cut the air. Stop! The girl cried, stepping into the doorway, her body trembling, her eyes wet but burning with fire. I am not afraid anymore, she shouted, her voice breaking. If you must take me, then do it, but leave them alone. They are not guilty. The crowd murmured, shocked by her defiance. The elders sneered. But the father turned sharply, his voice like thunder. No, you will not give yourself away, not while I breathe. He stepped in front of her, raising his rifle high, his finger near the trigger. You want fire? He roared, his voice shaking the desert. Then tonight, you will see that even one man can burn brighter than all your torches. The boy ran to his father's side, his small body trembling but his chin held high. The girl collapsed to her knees, torn between despair and awe, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The guards hesitated. The crowd wavered, for though they outnumbered him, the man's will stood unbroken. And for the first time, doubt began to ripple through the villagers. Some whispered, "Is this right? Is this truly justice?" The flames of the torches flickered in the desert wind. The drums slowed. The moment hung heavy, stretched thin like glass about to break. The girl raised her head, her tears shining in the firelight. And in her chest, a spark grew. She was no longer only a condemned girl, no longer only a victim. She was someone worth fighting for. And as the night of fire raged around them, one choice hung in the balance. Would the mob bring death to the door, or would the courage of one human father change everything forever? The night stretched long, heavy with smoke and the crackle of burning torches. The crowd stood outside the human's home, their faces lit by fire, their eyes filled with anger and doubt. The elders shouted, their voices sharp as knives, "Take the girl, burn the house, end this defiance." But the guards hesitated, their spears lowered only halfway, their steps uncertain, for before them stood a man who did not bend, a boy who did not fear, and a girl who no longer trembled. The father's voice boomed across the night, steady and unshaken. "If you want her, you must walk over my body, but hear me well. You bury her. You bury me too, and my son, and every shred of mercy you still have." The villagers muttered, their voices clashing like waves. Some cried for punishment. Others looked away, ashamed. The girl's tears glistened, but her voice rang out beside him. "I am not cursed. I am alive. I am not worthless. And if my life means nothing to you, then let it mean something here. With him. With them." Her words struck like lightning, not only in the hearts of the young, but in the minds of those who had begun to doubt their own cruelty. The boy stepped forward, his small frame fierce in the firelight. "She is my sister now. You cannot take her from us," he shouted. His courage, pure and unshaken, spread like a spark through the crowd. Some of the younger villagers lowered their torches, their hands trembling, their eyes filled with uncertainty. One woman whispered, "She is only a child." Another murmured, "Why should death be her only fate?" The elders' faces twisted, in anger as they sensed control slipping from their grasp. The leader of the council slammed his staff into the sand, his voice booming, "Silence! This human twists your hearts, but he is only one man, do not be fooled." But the silence that followed was not obedience. It was resistance. A guard stepped back, shaking his head. "I will not harm a child," he said, dropping his spear to the ground. Another followed, then another, the sound of weapons falling, breaking the rhythm of the drums. The crowd stirred, torn between fear of the elders and the growing fire of defiance. The father raised his rifle high, but his voice softened. "I do not want war. I do not want blood. I only want life. Hers, mine, my son's, and yours too. We do not have to keep living in chains of cruelty." The girl clutched the necklace tight, her chest heaving, her tears hot but her spirit rising. For the first time in her life she felt like her voice mattered, like her breath carried weight. She stepped beside the father and the boy, her small figure glowing in the firelight. "If you bury me again, then you bury your own mercy. But if you let me live, then maybe we can all change." The crowd fell into silence, the desert wind whispering through the flames. The elders looked around, their power trembling as doubt spread like cracks in stone. They shouted again, demanded obedience, but their voices no longer carried the same weight. One by one, villagers lowered their torches, turned their faces, and walked away. The mob broke apart, not with cheers or victory, but with quiet resistance, with the choice to no longer follow blindly. The elders, furious but powerless, turned and left, their cloaks whipping in the wind, their authority shattered. The guards followed, heads bowed, their spears abandoned in the sand. At last, the night grew still, only the firelight flickering on the house. The father lowered his rifle, his chest rising with heavy breaths, but his eyes remained fierce. He turned to the girl and the boy, his voice low but steady. "It is over for now." The boy ran forward, hugging his sister tightly, his small arms fierce around her. "I told you they can't take you," he whispered. The girl broke into tears, but this time they were not tears of fear. They were tears of belonging. She clung to him, to the necklace, to the warmth of a family she had never thought she would have. The father stepped closer, placing a strong hand on her shoulder, his face soft though his eyes glistened. "You are ours now. No law can change that." Dawn came slowly, golden light spilling across the desert. The house still stood, scarred, but unbroken, and within it, a family stronger than blood. The girl sat with the boy at the table, the necklace shining against her chest. The father stood nearby, gazing out the window at the horizon, where a new day rose, and for the first time, he felt something he had not known since his wife's passing. Hope. The girl whispered softly, almost to herself. "I thought I was meant to die. But now, I think I was meant to live here." The father turned, his voice firm but warm. "No one is meant to die in chains. You belong here, with us." The boy grinned, his eyes bright. "Forever," he said quickly, and she laughed through her tears. The desert wind blew gently, carrying away the ashes of fear, leaving only the promise of a new beginning. And though danger might return, though the elders might rise again, one truth was stronger than all. A lonely father, a grieving son, and a condemned girl had become a family, a bond no law could break.